Naomi's finger hovered over her phone screen, the message blinking. Wedding planner needs final head count now. Behind her, Graham's voice pleaded, just let Tori coordinate the seating. She only wants to help. Naomi turned slowly, meeting his eyes. 8 years she'd waited to love again, 8 years rebuilding herself. And now he wanted her to hand her wedding, their wedding, to his ex-wife. Okay, she said simply, watching his relief bloom before she added, the wedding's off. The silence in her kitchen felt enormous. Graham Sterling stood frozen, his hand still extended as if he could physically pull back the words now hanging between them. His salt and pepper hair caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows of Naomi's brownstone, and for a moment, she let herself remember why she'd fallen for him in the first place. Distinguished, gentle, present in ways her late husband Marcus had never quite managed during their 28 years together, but present wasn't enough if he couldn't see her. Naomi, her name came out rough. You don't mean that. She twisted the engagement ring off her finger, 2 carats, emerald cut, platinum setting he'd designed himself, and set it carefully on the marble counter between them. The soft click of metal on stone seemed impossibly loud. I mean it, she said quietly. I've spent the last 3 months watching your ex-wife slowly take over our wedding, and I've watched you let her. She's just trying to help. The kids want her involved. The kids are 34 years old, Graham. Naomi heard the edge in her voice and took a breath, reaching for the composure that had carried her through widowhood, through building her late husband's tech equity into a portfolio that meant she'd never need anyone's money. Ethan and Olivia are adults, and Victoria hasn't been your wife for 15 years. She's their mother. And I'm not trying to replace her. Naomi moved to the window, putting space between them, needing air that didn't smell like his cologne, cedar and bergamot, the scent that had become home. I never asked your children to call me Mom. I never pushed my way into their lives, but this is my wedding too, Graham, mine. And I'm not starting our marriage by handing the reins to the woman you divorced. She heard him move closer, felt the heat of him at her back. They were the same height. She was 5'10", and in heels, she could look him straight in the eye. She'd loved that about them. Equals. Except they weren't. Not in this. Baby, please. His hands settled on her shoulders, and oh, it would be so easy to lean back, to let his strength surround her. It's just one day. After that, it's you and me. Forever. Naomi turned in his hold, and what he must have seen in her face made him step back. If you can't stand up for me before we're married, she said, what happens after? Does Victoria get a say in where we vacation, in how we spend Christmas? Does she get to weigh in on whether we sell your place or mine, whether we host Thanksgiving, whether... She stopped, shook her head. I was married for 28 years to a man who loved me, but never quite chose me over everyone else's comfort. I buried him 8 years ago. And I promised myself the next time, if there was a next time, I would choose better. I'm not Marcus. No. You're a man who just told me to accept your ex-wife coordinating our wedding seating chart or call off the engagement. Naomi picked up the ring, held it out. So I'm choosing me, Graham. I'm calling it off. He didn't take the ring. Instead, he stared at her like she'd shot him, his blue eyes wide with something that looked like genuine shock. You're serious. Completely. Over seating arrangements? And there it was, the minimizing, the reduction of her boundary into something petty, something small. Naomi felt the last thread of doubt snap clean. Over respect, she corrected. Over partnership. Over you understanding that loving me means choosing me, even when it's uncomfortable. She set the ring on the counter again. I'm not going to beg you to see my worth, Graham. I know what I bring, and I deserve a man who knows it too. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he picked up the ring, closed his fist around it. I'll call you, he said finally, when you've had time to calm down. Don't, the word came out sharp. Don't call, don't text, don't send flowers or show up at my office or any of the things you think will fix this. I meant what I said. We're done. She walked to her front door, opened it. Cool September air rushed in, carrying the smell of fallen leaves and the distant sound of traffic. Graham stood in her kitchen for another breath, two, then walked past her without a word. Naomi closed the door behind him and leaned against it, eyes shut, waiting for the tears. They didn't come. Instead, what she felt was something unexpected, something that felt almost like relief. 6 months earlier, the gallery opening had been Naomi's idea, a fundraiser for literacy programs featuring emerging black artists from the tri-state area. She'd worn burgundy, a wrap dress that skimmed her curves and made her feel elegant, powerful. Her locks were swept up, silver streaks deliberate and striking against the dark brown. Graham had arrived late, apologetic, fresh from a board meeting about Sterling Industries' expansion into wind energy. He'd found her by the bar, slipped an arm around her waist and kissed her temple. "You look stunning," he'd murmured. "Have I told you I'm ridiculously in love with you?" She'd smiled, let herself sink into the warmth of him. They'd been dating for 18 months, careful, slow, two people who'd loved and lost and weren't in any rush to mess up something that felt this right. "You might have mentioned it," she'd teased, once or twice. He'd led her away from the crowd through a doorway into a smaller gallery space where abstract paintings glowed under track lighting, and then he'd gotten down on one knee. "Naomi Richardson," he had said, voice steady despite the nerves she could see in his eyes. "You brought light back into my life when I thought I'd lost it forever. You're brilliant and fierce, and you make me want to be better every single day. Would you marry me?" The ring had caught the light, emerald cut, exactly what she would have chosen. She'd said yes with tears in her eyes, and when he'd stood to kiss her, she'd felt 25 again, hopeful, chosen. Her son Jason had found them first, his calm cybersecurity analyst demeanor cracking into a rare grin. "Finally," he'd said, hugging her tight. "He's been planning this for 2 months, Mom, driving me crazy asking for advice." Maya had been next, her stepdaughter squealing and launching herself at both of them. "Oh my God, does this mean I get to plan the bachelorette party? Because I have ideas." Graham's twins had been more reserved. Ethan had shaken his father's hand, then hugged Naomi with genuine warmth. "Welcome to the chaos," he'd said. Olivia had been cooler, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, but she'd congratulated them both. And then Naomi's phone had buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations. Graham tells me you're a wonderful woman. I'm so happy for you both. Victoria." She'd shown Graham, whose expression had flickered with something uncomfortable. "She's trying," he'd said, to be supportive. Naomi had wanted to ask why his ex-wife had his new fiancé's number, wanted to ask why he'd told Victoria before the actual proposal. But it had been such a perfect night, and she'd pushed the unease down, down, down. She should have listened to it. The wedding planning had started innocently enough. Naomi had been clear about what she wanted: small, intimate, 75 guests maximum. A botanical garden ceremony in May when the azaleas would be blooming. Reception in the conservatory, string quartet, dinner stations instead of a seated meal. Elegant, but unfussy. A celebration of their love, not a spectacle. Graham had agreed to everything. They'd hired a planner, a woman named Simone, who specialized in sophisticated small-scale events. They'd toured venues, tasted cakes, debated flowers. It had been fun, even. The first intrusion had come in early December. Naomi had been reviewing invitation designs when Graham mentioned, almost casually, "Tori asked if she could see the guest list. She wants to make sure we didn't miss anyone from the Sterling Industries board." Naomi had looked up from the cardstock samples. "Why would Victoria need to see our guest list?" The kids mentioned the wedding to her. "She's just trying to be helpful. You know how she is about details." "No," Naomi wanted to say. "I don't know how she is. I've met your ex-wife exactly twice in 18 months. But she'd swallowed that, had simply said, "I'd prefer to keep the planning between us and Simone." Graham had nodded, but 2 days later, he'd mentioned that Victoria thought they should include the entire board. "It's a political thing, baby. These relationships matter for the company." Naomi had felt the first flutter of alarm. "Graham, we said 75 people. The entire board is another 20 guests." "I know, but no," she'd been firm. "This is our wedding, not a business function. If you need to schmooze the board, we can host a dinner later." He'd backed down, but Victoria's name kept coming up. "Victoria thinks we should do a first look instead of traditional ceremony entrance." Victoria suggested this florist. Apparently they did Olivia's firm holiday party. Victoria offered to handle the seating chart. She knows everyone, and it might be easier. Each time, Naomi had pushed back, and each time, Graham had looked at her like she was being difficult, like she was making problems where none existed. The breaking point had come last week. Naomi had arrived at Simone's office for what was supposed to be a final walkthrough of the timeline. She'd pushed through the glass doors and found Graham already there, with Victoria. The woman sat next to Graham on the cream sofa, a leather portfolio open on her lap, looking every inch the polished political wife she'd become. Blonde hair in a perfect bob, navy sheath dress, pearls. She'd smiled when Naomi entered, warm and completely unbothered. "Naomi, I hope you don't mind. Graham mentioned you were doing the final timeline today, and I had some thoughts about the ceremony order." Naomi had looked at Graham. He'd had the grace to appear uncomfortable. "Simone," Naomi had said slowly, ignoring Victoria entirely, "could you give us the room?" The wedding planner had fled. "What is she doing here?" Naomi had asked Graham. The kids asked if she could. "Graham, what is your ex-wife doing at our wedding planning meeting?" Victoria had stood smooth as silk. "I can see I've overstepped. I'll go. But Naomi, truly, I only want to help. This is my children's father's wedding. I care about them being comfortable." "They're adults," Naomi had said, voice level despite the rage building in her chest. "They can handle attending their father's wedding without their mother's input." Victoria's smile had tightened. "Of course. I'll leave you to it." She'd gathered her things, paused by Graham to squeeze his shoulder. "Call me later?" And Graham had nodded. He'd nodded. After Victoria left, Naomi had stood there in Simone's office, looking at the man she'd agreed to marry, and felt something fundamental shift. "You invited her," she'd said. "Ethan and Olivia have been stressed about the wedding. They're worried about things being awkward, about having to choose sides. Tori volunteered to help coordinate so they wouldn't feel caught in the middle. They're 34. They're my children. And I'm your fiancé, the woman you're supposed to be putting first." Naomi had picked up her purse. "I need some space, Graham. I need you to think about what you're actually asking me to accept here." She'd left him sitting there, and for 2 days he'd given her space. Then this afternoon, he'd shown up at her brownstone with flowers and that reasonable tone, asking her to just let Victoria coordinate the seating, just let his ex-wife make decisions about their wedding, just accept being second priority, just. Naomi had finally understood. This would never stop. Victoria would be there, always, if Graham couldn't set boundaries, and Naomi would spend her marriage fighting for space that should have been freely given. So she'd said, okay, and ended it. Now, alone in her kitchen with the afternoon light fading, Naomi made herself tea, rooibos, no sugar, and carried it upstairs to her bedroom. The brownstone was hers, bought with Marcus's life insurance and the equity she'd been smart enough to diversify before the tech crash. 4 stories in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, with original molding and a garden she tended herself. She'd been happy here, would be happy here again. Her phone buzzed. Graham. "I love you. Please don't do this." She deleted it without responding. Another buzz. "Maya, Jason just called me. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" Naomi smiled despite herself, her stepdaughter, fierce and loving. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just need some quiet tonight. Tomorrow. Love you, Naomi. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you." That was what finally brought the tears. Not grief exactly, just release. The recognition that she'd done something hard and necessary, and the people who really loved her understood why. She climbed into bed at 7:30, tea gone cold on her nightstand, and fell into the first peaceful sleep she'd had in weeks. Graham called 4 times over the next 2 days. Naomi didn't answer. He texted, "Can we please just talk?" She responded once. "There's nothing to say. I meant what I told you." He sent flowers, white roses, her favorite, with a card that read, "I choose you. Always." She gave them to her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who asked no questions and simply patted Naomi's hand. On the 3rd day, Maya showed up with takeout from the Thai place they both loved and a bottle of wine that cost more than Naomi's first car. "Okay," Maya said, setting everything on Naomi's dining table. "I'm here for whatever you need. Crying, raging, analyzing, or just eating pad see you and pretending men don't exist." Naomi hugged her stepdaughter. this woman who'd been 12 when she'd married Marcus, who'd been skeptical of her father's new wife until Naomi had shown up to every dance recital, every parent-teacher conference, every moment that mattered. They'd built something real, the two of them, something that had outlasted Marcus's death and grown stronger in the years since. "I'm not sad," Naomi said, surprising herself with the truth of it. "I thought I would be. I thought I'd feel like I was throwing away a second chance. But mostly I just feel free." Maya poured wine, handed over a glass. "You want to know what Jason said?" "Tell me." "He said, 'Finally.' I was starting to wonder if she'd forgotten who she was." Maya clinked her glass against Naomi's. "We've been watching you shrink yourself, trying to accommodate Graham's inability to disappoint anyone. It was hard to watch." Naomi sipped her wine, let that sink in. She'd spent 3 months telling herself she was being flexible, mature, understanding, but her children had seen the truth. "His kids hate me," she said. "His kids don't know you. There's a difference." Maya started unpacking containers. "Ethan's okay. He called to apologize yesterday. Said his mom had been feeding him some story about you trying to cut her out of family events. We know, but Victoria's good at playing victim. She's been doing it since before I was born." Maya paused. "You know, she called my dad once, after you two got engaged, wanted to compare notes on being married to Marcus Richardson." Naomi stared. "What did your father say?" "He shut her down, told her you were off limits, but she tried." Maya met her eyes. "Some women can't stand to see their ex happy, especially not with someone like you, successful, gorgeous, younger. It threatens her whole narrative." "She's remarried, to a senator. And apparently that's falling apart. Jason heard it from someone at one of Robert Madison's fundraisers. Trouble in paradise." Maya shrugged. "Doesn't matter. What matters is you're not responsible for managing Victoria's feelings, or Graham's kids' feelings, or Graham's inability to set boundaries." They ate in comfortable silence, and Naomi felt her shoulders drop away from her ears for the first time in weeks. "So what now?" Maya asked eventually. "Now?" Naomi considered. "Now I go back to my life, the life I had before Graham, board meetings, the literacy fundraiser, my book club, my garden." "Sounds lonely?" "Sounds peaceful." Naomi smiled. "I'm 56 years old, Maya. I've been married, widowed, and almost married again. I've raised children and built a career and learned that I'm perfectly fine on my own, better than fine. If love comes again, it'll be on my terms, with someone who doesn't need to be convinced I'm worth choosing." Maya raised her glass. "To women who know their worth. To knowing when to walk away," Naomi amended. They drank to that. On day 4, Jason came by with his wife Claire and little Marcus. The 3-year-old launched himself at Naomi with the uncomplicated affection of children, and she caught him, breathed in his baby shampoo smell. "Grandma," he announced, "I drew you a picture. It's a dinosaur eating a car." "My favorite," she said solemnly, accepting the crumpled paper covered in crayon scribbles. Jason watched her with his father's dark eyes, his quiet assessment. "How are you really?" "Really? I'm good." She set Marcus down, let him run to her bookshelf to pull out picture books. "I know you. Probably think I gave up too easily. I think you had enough self-respect to walk away from a man who kept choosing his ex-wife over you," Jason interrupted. "And I'm grateful you finally did it." Claire touched her son's arm. "What Jason means is we've been worried. You seemed stressed every time we saw you these last few months." "I was." Naomi sat, let Marcus climb into her lap with a book about trains. "I kept thinking I needed to be more understanding, more flexible, that maybe I was being unreasonable, expecting Graham to choose me over his children's comfort." "His children are adults who need to learn that their father's happiness matters too," Jason said bluntly. "And Victoria Sterling Madison is a master manipulator who's been playing games since before I knew what that meant." "You've met her?" "Once. At some tech conference Marcus dragged me to when I was in grad school. She cornered me, asked all these questions about you and Dad, how you handled his travel schedule, whether you minded his long hours." Jason's expression hardened. "Even then I could tell she was collecting ammunition. Dad saw it too. He told me later she was the kind of woman who needed everyone to revolve around her." Naomi held her grandson closer, watched him turn pages with sticky fingers. Marcus Richardson had been brilliant, driven, and emotionally distant, but he'd been perceptive about people, and he'd warned her in his way about women like Victoria. She wished he were here now, wished she could ask him if she'd done the right thing, but she already knew. Deep in her bones, she knew. "So what happens now?" Claire asked gently. "Are you going to that nonprofit conference in Baltimore next month?" "I am, and I'm going to actually enjoy it instead of worrying about getting back for wedding planning." Naomi smiled. "I'm going to do all the things I've been putting off. Maybe travel, maybe finally write that book everyone keeps saying I should write." "About what?" Marcus asked, looking up from his trains. "About grandmas who know when to say no," Naomi told him. He considered this seriously. "That's good. You should write that. Out of the mouths of babes." By the end of the first week, the calls from Graham had stopped. Naomi told herself that was what she wanted. She threw herself into work. 3 nonprofit boards, all needing strategic planning for their fiscal year. She met with her financial advisor about diversifying her portfolio. She had lunch with old friends who wanted to hear about the broken engagement and left satisfied when she showed no signs of falling apart. She was fine. She was more than fine. At night, though, alone in her bedroom with the brownstones settling around her, she'd catch herself reaching for her phone, wanting to text Graham about something funny Maya had said, or a book she'd finished, or just to say goodnight. 8 years of widowhood had taught her to be alone. 18 months with Graham had reminded her what partnership could feel like. She missed him, but she didn't regret her choice. On day 10, Ethan Sterling called. Naomi almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Ms. Richardson," he said, formal. "I owe you an apology. Several, actually." She settled into her reading chair, looked out at her garden where the last roses were fading. "I'm listening." "My mother she's been telling Olivia and me stories about you trying to exclude her from family events, about you being uncomfortable with her presence, about you asking Dad to choose between his children and his new marriage." Ethan's voice roughened. "None of that was true, was it?" "No. I believe you. I should have asked you directly instead of taking her word for it. Should have trusted Dad's judgment." He paused. "He's miserable, by the way. Hasn't been to the office in a week. Just sits in his apartment looking at pictures of you two." Naomi's chest tightened. "Ethan, I'm not telling you that to manipulate you. You don't owe him anything. But I wanted you to know that he knows he messed up, that he's been calling Mom, trying to understand why she did this, why she interfered." "And what did she say?" "That she was only trying to help, that she didn't realize she was overstepping." Ethan's tone made clear what he thought of that excuse. "Priya, my wife, she pointed out that Mom's been doing this kind of thing for years, subtle manipulation, making herself indispensable. She did it during my parents' marriage, and she's apparently still doing it now." "Your father needs to be the one to set boundaries with her," Naomi said quietly. "Not me, not you, him." "I know, I told him that." Ethan sighed. "I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Thank you for calling." "Naomi?" He used her first name, tentative. For what it's worth, you would have been good for him, good for all of us. She closed her eyes against unexpected tears. "Take care of yourself, Ethan." After they hung up, Naomi sat in the gathering dark and let herself cry. Not for Graham, not really. For the future she'd let herself imagine, the blended family holidays, the grandchildren playing together, the partnership she'd thought they could build. It would have been beautiful, but only if Graham had been willing to protect it. 3 weeks after she called off the wedding, Naomi received an invitation. The Children's Literacy Foundation's annual gala. She was on the host committee, had been for 5 years, so her name was on the invite list regardless. But seeing it in her mailbox felt like the universe testing her. Graham would be there. He donated generously to the foundation and never missed the event. She could skip it, claim illness, conflict, any excuse, or she could put on something stunning and remind herself, and him, exactly what he'd lost. Maya, when consulted, was enthusiastic. "Absolutely go. Wear that gold dress, the one that makes you look like a goddess." "I'm not trying to make him jealous." No, you're reminding yourself that you're a woman who shows up for commitments regardless of personal discomfort. That's even better. Maya grinned. Plus the gold dress. So on a Friday evening in late October, Naomi found herself in the ballroom of the plaza, wearing gold silk that draped perfectly over her curves. Her locks swept into an elegant updo that showed off the diamond earrings Marcus had given her for their 20th anniversary. She'd arrived with Jason, Claire, and Marcus, who was beside himself with excitement about the fancy party. They'd checked coats, accepted champagne, and made their way into the ballroom. And there, by the bar, stood Graham. He looked awful. 20 pounds lighter, shadows under his eyes, his tuxedo hanging a little loose. But when he saw her, when their eyes met across the room, the heat in his gaze nearly buckled her knees. She'd forgotten that look, the way he could make her feel like the only woman in the world. "Mom?" Jason's hand on her elbow. "You okay?" "Fine." She smiled at her grandson, who was tugging on her dress. "Yes, baby?" "There's a chocolate fountain." "Let's investigate that immediately," Claire said, steering Marcus toward the dessert table and giving Naomi and Jason space. "He's here," Jason observed unnecessarily. "I see that. Want me to accidentally spill my drink on him?" That startled a laugh out of her. "No, I'm fine, really." But her heart was hammering, and when Graham started moving through the crowd toward them, she had to force herself to stand still. "Naomi," he said when he reached her. His voice was raw. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." An awkward pause. Jason cleared his throat. "I'm going to check on Claire and Marcus." "Coward," Naomi murmured, but let him go. She and Graham stood facing each other, the noise of the gala washing around them like surf. "How are you?" he asked. "Well, you?" "Not well." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "I've been trying to give you space, but seeing you here, I need you to know I understand now, what I was asking you to accept, what I was doing." "Graham, Ethan called me out. So did Maya, actually. She sent me a very detailed email about how I'd failed you." A ghost of a smile. "Your daughter doesn't pull punches." "Stepdaughter," Naomi corrected automatically. "And no, she doesn't. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I couldn't set boundaries with Tori, why I kept prioritizing everyone else's comfort over yours." He met her eyes. "Turns out I've been doing it my whole life, with my parents, with Tori during our marriage, with my kids. Anyone who pushed, I caved to. You were the first person who ever pushed back." "I don't want to be someone you have to stand up to," Naomi said quietly. "I want to be someone you stand up for." I know that now." He shifted closer, and she caught that cedar and bergamot scent, felt her body respond with muscle memory. "I told Tori she's not welcome to contact me unless it's an emergency involving the kids. I told Ethan and Olivia that I love them, but my romantic relationships are not subject to their approval. And I've been doing the work to figure out why I ever thought any of that was your problem to manage." Naomi's throat felt tight. "That's good. I'm glad you're doing that work. Is there any chance—" "No," she said it gently but firmly. "Graham, I care about you. I probably still love you, but I can't go back. I spent 3 months watching you choose your ex-wife over me, again and again, and I can't trust that it won't happen again the next time someone needs something from you." His face crumpled, and she had to look away. "I understand," he said after a moment. "I hate it, but I understand." Someone called his name, a board member wanting to introduce him to a donor. He looked torn, and Naomi made the decision easier. "Go," she said. "It's fine." He hesitated, then reached out to touch her hand. Just once, briefly. "Thank you for coming tonight, for not letting me chase you away from something you care about." Then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd, and Naomi stood alone feeling like she'd survived something. She made it through dinner, seated carefully at opposite ends of the ballroom, and through the speeches and the auction. Marcus fell asleep against Claire's shoulder during the program, and Naomi let herself focus on her family, on the people who'd shown up for her when it mattered. During the after-dinner reception, while Jason and Claire took Marcus home, she found herself at the bar next to a familiar face. David Chen had been Marcus's best friend and business partner. They'd built their company together, sold it together, and after Marcus died, David had helped Naomi navigate the financial complexities with patience and grace. He was 60 now, recently divorced, with silver threading through his black hair. "Naomi Richardson," he said warmly. "You're a sight for sore eyes." "David, I didn't know you'd be here. Last-minute addition to the host committee, tech industry representation." He signaled the bartender for 2 glasses of champagne, handed her one. "I heard about the engagement. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was the right call." He studied her with intelligent dark eyes. "You seem remarkably at peace for someone who just ended a relationship." "Because I am." She sipped champagne, felt bubbles tickle her nose. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Marcus used to say that about bad business deals." "Marcus was smart about a lot of things. He was an idiot about you, though," David said it matter-of-factly. "He knew it, too. Used to tell me he'd married up and spent 28 years trying to deserve you." Naomi blinked against sudden tears. "He never said that to me." "He should have." David touched her elbow lightly. "Would you like to dance, for old time's sake?" She let him lead her onto or the floor, where a dozen other couples swayed to the string quartet. David was a good dancer, better than Marcus had been, certainly better than Graham, and she let herself relax into the familiar rhythm. They were halfway through the song when she felt eyes on her back. She glanced over David's shoulder and saw Graham standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching them with an expression that made her breath catch. Jealousy, pure, undisguised, burning jealousy. "I think I'm causing problems," David murmured. "You're not doing anything wrong." "No, but your ex-fiancé looks like he wants to challenge me to a duel." Despite herself, Naomi smiled. "Let him look." David spun her gently, and when she came around again, Graham was gone. She told herself that was fine. Told herself she didn't care. Told herself all the right things as David walked her to coat check an hour later, as he made sure she had a cab, as he kissed her cheek and said, "If you ever want to have dinner, no pressure, just 2 old friends catching up, call me." She told herself she was over Graham Sterling as she rode home through the glittering Manhattan night. But when she got to her brownstone, when she climbed the steps and unlocked her door, she found him sitting on her stoop, waiting. "We need to talk," he said, and despite every sensible instinct, despite every boundary she'd set, Naomi heard herself say, "Come inside." Chapter 2. Graham followed her inside, and Naomi was suddenly acutely aware of the intimacy of her space. He'd been here before, of course, had spent nights here, mornings, had cooked breakfast in her kitchen and made love to her in the bedroom upstairs. But that was before. Now he felt like an intruder, disrupting the peace she'd carefully reconstructed. She didn't offer him a seat, just set her clutch on the entry table, slipped off her heels and waited. "You looked beautiful tonight," he said again. "You said that already." "I need to say it again. You looked beautiful and happy, and I realized I haven't seen you look that relaxed in months." He raked a hand through his hair. "Not since the wedding planning started." "Graham, it's late. Were you this unhappy the whole time, these last few months?" He moved closer, and she could smell whiskey under the cologne. Not drunk, but drinking. "Because I keep replaying everything, and I can see now how I kept choosing wrong, kept letting Tori insert herself, kept making you smaller so everyone else could be comfortable." "Yes," Naomi said simply. "I was unhappy. I told you I was unhappy. You just didn't hear me." "I heard you. I just didn't understand how serious you were until you gave back the ring." His voice cracked. "I thought you'd cave. That's the worst part. I actually thought if I just waited you out, you'd compromise again, like you had been doing. So why are you here now?" "Because I saw you with David Chen tonight, and it felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart." Graham closed the distance between them, and Naomi found herself backed against her living room wall. "I saw another man's hands on you, saw you smiling up at him, and I wanted to break things, wanted to tell him you were mine." "I'm not yours," she whispered, but her body was betraying her, responding to his proximity. "You were. For 18 months you were mine and I was yours, and I threw it away because I'm a coward who can't stand to disappoint anyone." He braced one hand against the wall beside her head. "But seeing you tonight, seeing what I lost, Naomi, I can't do this. I can't just let you go." "You have to." "Why? Because I messed up? Because I didn't protect us the way I should have? His other hand came up to cup her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone. I'll do better. I'm doing better. I meant what I said earlier. I've set boundaries with Tori, with the kids, with everyone who thought they had a say in my life. Graham, she tried to sound firm, but it came out breathless. You're doing that for yourself. That's good. But it doesn't change what happened between us. Then let me make new things happen. He leaned in, his lips a whisper from hers. Let me show you I've changed. She should stop this, should push him away, should tell him to leave, should remember all the reasons she'd ended things. But then his mouth was on hers, and thinking became impossible. The kiss was desperate, hungry, nothing like the gentle affection they'd shared before. This was need and rage, and 3 weeks of separation compressed into heat and teeth and the slide of tongues. Graham's hands went to her waist, pulled her flush against him, and Naomi heard herself make a sound she didn't recognize. I've missed you, he breathed against her mouth. Missed this, missed everything about you. She kissed him back like drowning, let him lift her, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the kitchen. He set her on the counter, the same counter where she'd placed his ring 3 weeks ago, and stepped between her thighs. Tell me to stop, he murmured, trailing kisses down her throat. Tell me you don't want this. But she did want it, wanted him with a ferocity that terrified her. Her hands found his shirt buttons, started working them free. This doesn't mean we're back together, she managed. I don't care. I just need... He groaned when her hands found bare skin, when her nails scraped lightly over his chest. God, Naomi. She pulled him closer, and he kissed her again, slower this time, thorough. His hands slid up her thighs, pushing the gold silk higher, and she arched into his touch. This was a mistake. She knew it was a mistake. But right now, with his mouth on hers and his hands on her skin, she couldn't remember why. They stayed like that for long minutes, kissing with increasing urgency, until Graham pulled back just far enough to meet her eyes. Come upstairs with me, he said, please. And Naomi, who prided herself on her discipline, her boundaries, her ability to walk away, found her resolve crumbling like sand. This changes nothing, she said. Everything, he corrected. This changes everything. But she took his hand and led him upstairs anyway. In her bedroom, with the city lights filtering through gauze curtains, Graham undressed her with reverent hands. He took his time, pressing kisses to each new expanse of skin, murmuring her name like a prayer. When she reached for him, he caught her wrists gently. Let me, he said. Let me show you how sorry I am, how much I love you. So she let him worship her with his mouth, his hands, his body. Let him take her apart piece by piece until she was shaking and calling his name, and when he finally moved inside her, when they found that ancient rhythm they'd perfected over 18 months, Naomi felt tears slip down her temples. I've got you, Graham whispered, his forehead pressed to hers. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Afterward, they lay tangled in her sheets, breathing hard, Graham's hand tracing lazy patterns on her hip. I love you, he said into the dark. I never stopped, not for a second. Naomi stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what they'd just done settle over her. This was a mistake, she said finally. No. His arm tightened around her. This was us remembering why we matter, why we're worth fighting for. Graham, she turned to face him, saw hope and fear warring in his expression. Sex doesn't fix the fundamental problem. You still don't know how to choose me over everyone else's comfort. I'm learning. Give me a chance to prove it. I can't. She sat up, pulled the sheet around herself. I can't put myself back in that position, waiting to see if you'll stand up for me, wondering when the next person will come along who you can't say no to. Naomi, you should go. He stared at her like she'd slapped him. You're serious? Completely. She met his eyes, let him see her resolve. What just happened? It was goodbye. It was us having one last moment, but it doesn't change my decision. So that's it? You're just going to let me leave? Yes. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he climbed out of bed, started gathering his clothes. She watched him dress, this man she'd loved, this man she still loved, and reminded herself that love wasn't enough. Love without respect was just suffering with company. At her bedroom door, he turned back. If you change your mind, I won't. But if you do, I'll be waiting. Then he was gone, and Naomi was alone with the ghost of his cologne and the ache in her chest that felt suspiciously like regret. She didn't cry, just stripped the bed, remade it with fresh sheets, and climbed back in to stare at the ceiling until dawn. Sleeping with him had been a mistake, but it had also been necessary. A final closing of the door, a last reminder of what she was choosing to walk away from. And in the morning, when sunlight streamed through her, windows and the city hummed to life below, she still didn't regret it. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Naomi threw herself into work, strategic planning sessions, grant reviews, the 1,000 small decisions that came with serving on non-profit boards. She had lunch with old friends, went to the theater with Maya, babysat Marcus while Jason and Claire had date nights. She was fine. She was building a life. Graham stopped calling, stopped texting. The only sign he still existed in her orbit was the occasional mention from Ethan, who'd started having lunch with Jason every few weeks. The Sterling and Richardson children, apparently, had decided their parents' breakup didn't have to end their friendship, which was mature and healthy and made Naomi feel obscurely guilty. In mid-November, she got a call from the Gates Foundation. "Ms. Richardson," the program officer said, "we're launching a women's economic empowerment initiative in Ghana, 6-month fellowship starting in January. Your name came up repeatedly as someone who could help us design the curriculum. Would you be interested?" Naomi had been to Ghana once, 15 years ago, and fallen in love with the energy, the creativity, the resilient women building businesses against enormous odds. The chance to spend 6 months working directly with women's cooperatives, helping them access capital and markets. It was exactly the kind of project she'd been craving. Yes, she heard herself say, absolutely yes. After she hung up, she sat in her home office feeling something like excitement for the first time in months. This was a gift, a chance to step completely away from her life here, to invest herself in work that mattered, to remember who she was beyond anyone's fiancé or ex-fiancé. She called Maya first. "Ghana? Mom, that's amazing." Her stepdaughter's enthusiasm was immediate and genuine. "When do you leave?" "Mid-January. I'll be back in July." "Perfect. So you'll miss the entire Valentine's Day industrial complex and come back in time for summer." Maya paused. "Does Graham know?" "No, and he doesn't need to. We're not together." "Right, but you're going to tell him eventually? Because if he hears it through the grapevine—" "Maya, I don't owe him updates on my life." "No, but you're going to be gone for 6 months, to another continent, and whether you want to admit it or not, you still care about him. Maybe give him the courtesy of hearing it from you." Naomi hated when her stepdaughter was right. She put off calling Graham for 2 weeks, told herself she needed to finalize details with the Gates Foundation first, needed to make arrangements for her brownstone, needed to brief her board colleagues on her absence, but really, she was just avoiding. Finally, on a Thursday afternoon, she texted him, "Can we talk? Coffee somewhere neutral?" His response came immediately, "Yes? When?" They met the next morning at a cafe in Park Slope, equidistant from both their homes. Graham arrived first, already had coffee waiting for her, oat milk latte, no sugar, the way she always took it. He looked better than he had at the gala, still thinner, but the haunted quality had faded from his eyes. He stood when she approached, and for an awkward moment they both hesitated before settling on a brief, stilted hug. "Thanks for meeting me," Naomi said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Of course. What's going on?" She wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I'm leaving for 6 months. Fellowship program in Ghana with the Gates Foundation. I leave in January." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, hurt, resignation. "That's wonderful. Congratulations." "Thank you." "When did you find out?" 3 weeks ago. I've been finalizing details." He nodded slowly. "And you're telling me now because I didn't want you to hear it from someone else. Because despite everything, you mattered to me." "Matter to me," she met his eyes. "And because I thought you'd want to know." "I appreciate that." He sipped his coffee, and she watched the careful control in his movements. 6 months is a long time. "It is. Will you have phone service? Internet?" "Yes, but I'll be pretty absorbed in the work. It's an intensive program." "Right." He set down his cup. "So this is really goodbye." "Graham." "No, it's okay. I get it." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're moving on. building a life that doesn't include me. That's what I deserve. This isn't about punishing you, isn't it? The question was soft, not accusatory. I broke your trust, you ended things, and now you're leaving the country for half a year. Sounds like consequences to me. The fellowship has nothing to do with you, Naomi said firmly. It's an opportunity I would have taken regardless of our situation. It's work I care about, work that matters. I know, I'm sorry. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I'm happy for you, truly. You're going to do incredible things there. They sat in silence for a moment, the cafe bustling around them with the morning rush. For what it's worth, Graham said finally. I have been doing the work, therapy twice a week, set real boundaries with Tori. She's not allowed to contact me unless it's an emergency. Told the kids that my relationships are my own to manage. I've been trying to become the man you needed me to be. That's good, I'm glad. But it's too late. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know. Maybe. I just know I can't go backward, can't put myself back in that position of waiting for you to choose me. And if I showed you I could, that I have, then I'd be happy for you, for your next relationship. She reached across the table, squeezed his hand once. Graham, what we had was real, but it wasn't enough. And 6 months in Ghana will be good for me. I'll help me figure out what comes next. He turned his hand over, laced his fingers through hers. Will you at least let me know you're safe? Every once in a while? I can do that. Then I guess this is goodbye. He raised her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. I hope Ghana is everything you need it to be. I hope you find whatever you're looking for there. Thank you. She pulled her hand back, gathered her things. At the door, she looked back once. Graham sat in the booth watching her leave, and the expression on his face would haunt her for weeks, but she still walked out the door. Christmas came and went in a blur of family gatherings and last-minute preparations. Naomi spent the holiday with Jason, Claire, and Marcus, and tried not to think about the fact that this was supposed to be her first Christmas as Graham's wife. Maya flew in from LA for New Year's, and they spent the evening eating takeout and watching romantic comedies, pointedly ignoring the fact that they were both single and fine with it. You're going to love Ghana, Maya said, refilling their wine glasses at midnight, and you're going to come back a completely different person. That's what adventures do. I'm 56. I think I'm pretty much set in my ways. Please, you walked away from a billionaire fiancé because he couldn't set boundaries with his ex-wife. You're the least set in your ways person I know. Maya clinked her glass against Naomi's. To adventures, to choosing yourself, to women who know their worth. To new beginnings, Naomi amended, and as the city erupted in celebration outside her windows, she let herself believe it. On January 15th, Jason drove her to JFK. Her bags were packed with practical clothes, malaria medication, and enough sunscreen to survive the equatorial sun. The Gates Foundation had arranged housing in Accra, a small apartment near the university where she'd be working with faculty to develop the curriculum. 6 months. She'd be back in July. She could do this. At security, Jason hugged her tight. Call when you land. Claire's already planning your welcome home party. I haven't even left yet. She likes to be prepared. He pulled back, studied her face. You look excited. I am. Terrified, but excited. Dad would be proud of everything you've done, everything you're doing. Naomi blinked back tears. Thank you for saying that. It's true. He kissed her forehead. Go change some lives, Mom. She made it through security, through the gate, all the way to her seat in business class before she let herself check her phone one last time. One new message. Graham, safe travels. I'll be thinking of you. She typed a response. Thank you. Take care of yourself. Then she turned off her phone, accepted champagne from the flight attendant, and watched New York disappear beneath the clouds. She was 56 years old, and she was starting over. Again. And this time, she was doing it entirely on her own terms. 3 weeks into the fellowship, Ghana was everything Naomi remembered and more. The heat was oppressive, the poverty heartbreaking, and the work absolutely exhausting. She spent her days in classrooms and community centers, working with women who'd built businesses selling everything from textiles to soap to agricultural products. Women who needed access to capital, to markets, to the thousand small things that could mean the difference between subsistence and success. It was humbling and invigorating and exactly what she needed. Her apartment was small but comfortable. One bedroom, a tiny kitchen, air conditioning that worked most of the time. She'd made friends with her neighbor, a Ghanaian professor named Amma, who brought her palm nut soup and taught her to haggle at the market. Video calls with family became weekly rituals. Maya on Sundays, Jason and the family on Wednesdays. Marcus would hold up drawings and tell her elaborate stories about preschool, and she'd ache with missing him. But she didn't regret coming. On a Friday afternoon in early February, she returned to her apartment to find an email from Ethan Sterling. Ms. Richardson, I hope this email finds you well, and that Ghana is everything you hoped. I wanted to reach out because I've learned something I think you should know. My mother has been telling people, including my sister and several family friends, that you and my father broke up because you couldn't handle his close relationship with his children, that you issued an ultimatum, them or you, and that he chose us. This is a complete fabrication. I know because I was there for many of the conversations you and Dad had about the wedding planning. I know Mom was the one inserting herself, not us asking for her involvement. And I know you walked away because Dad couldn't set boundaries, not because you wanted to separate him from his family. I've confronted Mom about this. She claims she's just sharing her perspective, but it's damaging both your reputation and Dad's. People think he chose his kids over his fiancé, which makes him look like a saint. And people think you're the kind of woman who'd ask a man to abandon his children, which makes you look terrible. I'm writing to ask permission to correct the record publicly, to tell people what actually happened. You don't deserve to have your name dragged through the mud because my mother can't accept that Dad has moved on from her. Please let me know how you'd like me to proceed. Respectfully, Ethan. Naomi read the email 3 times, feeling fury build with each pass. Victoria was still manipulating the narrative, still inserting herself, still making Naomi the villain. And Graham, did he know? Was he allowing this? She wrote back immediately. Ethan, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I appreciate your integrity more than I can express. However, I don't want you to correct anything publicly. Your mother's behavior reflects on her, not on me. The people who matter know the truth. The people who don't, their opinions aren't my concern. I do ask that you share this information with your father. He needs to know what's being said, and he needs to decide whether he's comfortable with his ex-wife spreading lies about someone he claims to love. I'm grateful for your friendship and your honesty. Please give my best to Priya. Warmly, Naomi. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she opened a new message to Graham. I just heard from Ethan about Victoria's latest round of lies. I thought you should know what she's telling people. Whether you choose to address it is up to you, but I won't be made a villain in someone else's story. I deserve better than that. We both do. She sent that too, then closed her laptop and went for a walk. The sun was setting over Accra, turning the sky orange and gold. Street vendors called out their wares, children played soccer in empty lots, and the city hummed with life. Naomi walked until her anger cooled, until she could think clearly. Victoria Sterling Madison was a master manipulator, but she'd overplayed her hand. Ethan knew the truth now. Eventually Olivia would too. And Graham would have to choose, once and for all, whether he was going to let his ex-wife control the narrative of his life. It wasn't Naomi's problem anymore. She'd walked away. She'd chosen herself, and she'd keep choosing herself no matter what lies Victoria told. Her phone buzzed, a text from Graham. I'm handling it. I should have handled it months ago. I'm so sorry. She stared at the message for a long moment, then put her phone away without responding. Sorry wasn't enough. Action was what mattered now. 2 months into the fellowship march in Ghana was the start of the long, rainy season. The air felt like breathing through wet cloth, and Naomi's clothes never quite dried. But the work was flourishing. The women's cooperative they'd been supporting had secured its first major contract, textiles to a retailer in South Africa. Celebrations lasted 3 days. Naomi called Maya to share the success, and her stepdaughter picked up on the second ring. Mom, how's the motherland? Hot, wet, and wonderful. We just finalized a major deal for the textile cooperative. These women are going to triple their income. That's incredible. You must be so proud. I am. How are things there? A pause. Okay, I wasn't going to tell you this because you're focused on work, but I feel like you should know. Graham confronted Victoria. Publicly. Naomi's stomach dropped. What happened? Ethan told his sister what Victoria's been saying. Olivia was horrified. Apparently she had no idea Mom was lying. The three of them, Graham, Ethan, and Olivia, showed up at some charity event Victoria was hosting with Senator Madison. In front of about 200 people, Graham very calmly told the room that he and Victoria have been divorced for 15 years, that she has no role in his personal life, and that anyone who wants the truth about his broken engagement should ask him directly instead of listening to second-hand lies. Oh my God. It gets better. Senator Madison apparently had no idea Victoria had been interfering in Graham's relationships. Rumor is he's filing for divorce. Says his political career can't survive being married to someone who creates this kind of drama. Naomi sat down heavily on her couch. How do you know all this? Jason heard it from Ethan, but also it made page 6. Billionaire confronts ex at charity gala. There's video. Send it to me. Are you sure? It's kind of intense. Send it. 5 minutes later, Naomi was watching shaky phone footage of Graham Sterling standing at a podium, looking calm and devastatingly handsome in a tuxedo. I want to address something that's apparently been circulating in our community, he said, voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. My engagement ended last October because I failed to set appropriate boundaries with people who had no business involved in my wedding planning. That failure hurt someone I loved deeply, someone who deserved better than what I gave her. The narrative that she issued ultimatums or wanted to separate me from my children is categorically false and deeply harmful. Victoria, he looked directly at his ex-wife. You know the truth. Stop spreading lies. The video ended with the room in stunned silence and Victoria's face white with fury. Naomi watched it 3 times. Then she called Graham. He answered on the first ring. Naomi, I saw the video. I should have done it months ago, years ago probably. He sounded tired. I let her control the narrative for too long. Let her make you the villain because it was easier than confronting her. Graham, I'm not telling you this to win you back. I'm telling you because you deserve to have someone defend you, and I finally did. Too late, but I did it. Naomi felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Thank you. Victoria's marriage is falling apart. Her own lies destroyed it, and my kids finally see who she really is. Ethan won't speak to her. Olivia's in therapy, processing years of manipulation. It's a mess. I'm sorry. Don't be. This was necessary. Painful, but necessary. He paused. How's Ghana? Transformative. We just closed a major deal. The women I'm working with are extraordinary. I knew you'd be amazing at this. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Naomi felt something shift. Not back to how they were, but forward to something new. When I get back, she said slowly, maybe we could have coffee. Just to talk. As friends. I'd like that. His voice was careful, hopeful. I'm not going to push, Naomi. I'm just grateful you're willing to talk at all. One step at a time. One step at a time, he agreed. After they hung up, Naomi sat in her small apartment listening to rain drum against the roof and let herself feel something she hadn't allowed in months. Hope. Not for a reconciliation, necessarily, but for the possibility that people could grow, could change, could learn from their mistakes and become better versions of themselves. Graham had finally chosen her. It was too late to save their engagement, but maybe it wasn't too late for something new. By May, Naomi had settled into a rhythm. Early mornings at the cooperative, afternoons with the curriculum team, evenings cooking simple meals and video calling home. She'd made real friends, Amma and her husband Kofi, the other Gates fellows, the women she worked with who taught her as much as she taught them. She was happy. For the first time in years, maybe decades, she was simply uncomplicatedly happy. Her phone calls with Graham had become weekly. They talked about his work, her projects, safe topics that didn't stray into relationship territory. He told her about therapy breakthroughs, about reconnecting with Ethan and Olivia on healthier terms. She told him about the women's stories, about the resilience she witnessed daily. It felt like friendship, real friendship, built on respect and honesty. And if sometimes she caught herself missing him, missing his laugh, his touch, the way he'd made her coffee every morning, well, that was natural. You didn't just stop loving someone because the timing was wrong. In mid-May, Jason called with news. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you to not panic." Naomi's heart seized. "Is Marcus okay?" "Marcus is fine. Everyone's fine. But he had a little accident at the playground yesterday. Fell off the climbing structure, hit his head. He's okay." Jason rushed to add, "But we took him to the ER to be safe. Mild concussion. They kept him overnight for observation. He's home now and back to his normal chaos." "Oh, baby." Naomi pressed a hand to her chest. "I should come home." "No, absolutely not. He's fine, I promise. But I wanted you to know because Graham showed up." "What?" "Maya called him. She thought you'd want to know. And since you weren't here, she figured the next best thing was calling Graham." Jason sighed. He dropped everything and came straight to the hospital. Stayed the whole night. Brought us coffee, kept Claire calm, read stories to Marcus when he was awake. Naomi closed her eyes, pictured Graham in a hospital waiting room, being exactly the kind of steady, caring presence her family needed. "He loves you," Jason said quietly. "And more than that, he loves us. Your family. He showed up not because he thought it would win you back, but because Marcus matters to him. We matter to him." "Jay? I'm not telling you what to do, Mom. I'm just telling you what I saw. A man who's done the work to become someone worthy of you, whenever you're ready to see that too." After they hung up, Naomi sat with the information for a long time. Graham had shown up for her family when she couldn't, had been there for her grandson, her son, her daughter-in-law, not as a grand gesture, but as genuine care. That mattered. That mattered more than all the romantic declarations in the world. She pulled up his contact, stared at it for a full minute before typing, "Jason told me what you did. Thank you for being there when I couldn't. It means everything." His response came immediately, "I love that kid. And I love his grandmother. I'd do anything for your family. I know. I see that now. Does that change anything?" Naomi sat with the question. Did it? Could it? I don't know yet. But I'm coming home in 2 months. Maybe we can figure it out then. I'll be waiting. However long it takes. She smiled through tears and sent one more message. No grand gestures, no showing up at the airport. Just be you. The man who shows up for what matters, deal. The day Naomi's plane touched down at JFK, it was the middle of July, and New York was sweltering. She cleared customs exhausted, her skin darker from equatorial sun, her hair longer, her heart somehow both fuller and lighter than when she'd left. Jason had promised to pick her up, but when she walked out into arrivals, she saw not just her son, but her entire family. Jason and Claire, Marcus bouncing with excitement, Maya grinning behind her phone camera, and standing slightly apart, looking uncertain and hopeful, was Graham. He'd kept his promise. No grand gesture. He was just there, holding a small bouquet of white roses, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, looking nervous as a teenager. "Grandma!" Marcus launched himself at her, and Naomi caught him, buried her face in his hair, and breathed in home. "I missed you so much," she whispered. "I missed you more. I learned to tie my shoes and everything." She laughed, kissed his forehead, then stood to hug Jason and Claire, to embrace Maya, to accept welcome home from her children. And then Graham was there, standing just outside the circle, waiting for permission. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." She took the roses he offered. "You came. You told me not to do a grand gesture. This felt right. Being here with your family, if that's okay." Naomi looked at him, really looked. He'd lost the haunted quality entirely. He looked healthy, grounded, at peace with himself. And he was standing back, letting her control this moment, not pushing. "It's okay," she said. "It's more than okay." They rode back to Brooklyn in Jason's SUV, Naomi sandwiched between Marcus and Graham in the back seat, listening to her grandson narrate every detail of the past 6 months. Graham's hand found hers in the space between them, and she let him hold it, one step at a time. At her brownstone, her family had prepared a welcome home meal. Claire had cooked all Naomi's favorites, Maya had decorated with flowers, and Marcus had made a banner that read, "Welcome home, Grandma," in wobbly letters. It was perfect. They ate and laughed, and Naomi told stories about Ghana, about the women who'd changed her life as much as she'd changed theirs. And Graham sat quietly, contributing when appropriate, but mostly just watching her with soft eyes. After dinner, when the family was cleaning up, Graham asked, "Can we talk? Just for a few minutes?" They stepped out into her garden, where roses climbed the fence and the air smelled like summer earth. The city hummed beyond the walls, but here it was almost peaceful. 6 months is a long time, Graham said. I don't want to assume anything, but I need you to know. I'm not the same man you left. I've done the work, set boundaries that stick, learned to disappoint people when necessary. I'm in therapy long term, not just until I win you back. This is who I am now. I can see that. And I need you to know that I see you, all of you, your strength, your worth, your unwillingness to compromise your dignity. I see it and I love you for it, not in spite of it. He took her hands. I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not even asking you to get back together. I'm just asking if you're willing to see where this goes, slowly, on your terms. Naomi looked up at this man who'd broken her heart and then spent 6 months becoming someone who wouldn't, who'd shown up for her family, confronted his demons, changed his life. I don't want to rush anything, she said carefully. Neither do I. And I need to know that if Victoria starts her games again, she won't. But if she tries, I'll shut it down immediately. You have my word. Words are easy, Graham. I know, which is why I'm offering actions instead. He squeezed her hands gently. Date me. Let me prove it. However long it takes. Naomi felt a smile tugging at her lips. You're really willing to start from scratch? I'd start from negative numbers if that's what you needed. She laughed, and it felt like breathing for the first time in months. Okay, she said. We can date, but Graham, this is the last chance. If you can't choose me, choose us, consistently and without wavering. I'm done, for real this time. I understand, and I won't let you down. He pulled her closer, and she let him, let herself rest against his chest and listen to his heartbeat. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you too, every single day. They stood like that as the sky darkened and the stars emerged, and Naomi let herself believe in second chances, in people who could grow, in love that was worth fighting for, but only if both people showed up to the fight. Chapter 3. 3 months later. Dating Graham the second time around felt entirely different from the first. They moved slowly, deliberately. Dinner dates where they talked about everything, his childhood, her marriage to Marcus, the patterns they'd both fallen into, coffee meetings where they discussed boundaries and expectations, weekend walks through Prospect Park where they held hands and simply existed together without pressure. Graham kept his word. When Victoria tried to call him about some urgent family matter that turned out to be about holiday planning, he told her firmly to contact Ethan instead. When Olivia suggested he should run things by Mom before making decisions, he sat his daughter down and explained again that his romantic life was not subject to Victoria's input. And slowly, carefully, Naomi felt her walls coming down. They hadn't slept together again, hadn't even kissed beyond brief tender moments at doorsteps. Graham seemed determined to earn every single inch of ground, and Naomi found herself respecting him more for it. You're glowing, Maya observed during one of their Sunday calls, like genuinely happy. It's weird and wonderful. I am happy, Naomi admitted. He's different. We're different together. So when are you letting him back in fully? I don't know. Maybe soon. Maybe never. We're just seeing where it goes. But 3 weeks later, on a crisp October afternoon, everything changed. Naomi was at a board meeting when Jason's call came through. She normally silenced her phone, but something made her glance at it, see his name, see him calling a second time immediately after she declined. Her stomach dropped. She excused herself, stepped into the hallway. Jay? What's wrong? It's Marcus. His voice was shaking. He fell at the playground, hit his head on the equipment. There's blood, Mom. So much blood. We're in an ambulance heading to Presbyterian. Naomi's vision tunneled. I'm coming. I'm on my way right now. She grabbed her things, made incoherent apologies to the board, and ran for her car. Presbyterian was 40 minutes in traffic, and every second felt like an eternity. She called Claire. "How bad?" she asked without preamble. "Bad enough that they're taking him straight to pediatric trauma." Claire's voice was steady, but Naomi could hear the terror underneath. "He was unconscious for maybe 30 seconds. He's awake now, crying, which the paramedics say is good, but Naomi, there's so much blood." "Head wounds bleed a lot," Naomi said, trying to convince herself as much as Claire. "Even minor ones. He's going to be fine. He has to be fine. He will be. I'm almost there." She made it to the hospital in 35 minutes, parked illegally, and ran through the ER entrance. Jason was in the waiting room, still in his work clothes, looking younger than his 32 years. "Mom," he grabbed her in a hug. "They took him back. CT scan. They said head injuries in toddlers are unpredictable." "Where's Claire?" "With him. They only let one parent back." Naomi pulled her son down into a chair, held his hand. "Tell me exactly what happened." "He was climbing on the jungle gym, the one he's climbed 100 times, but he slipped, fell backward, hit his head on the metal platform below." Jason's voice cracked. "I was right there, Mom. I was watching. I just couldn't catch him in time. This is not your fault. He's 3 years old. He's my baby." I know, sweetheart." They sat in the industrial waiting room, with its fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell, and Naomi prayed to a God she wasn't entirely sure she believed in. Prayed for her grandson, for her son, for Claire, for the doctors who had Marcus's life in their hands. Her phone buzzed. Maya, having heard from Jason. "I'm on the next flight. Should be there by tonight. Thank you. Love you." Another buzz. "Graham, Jason texted me. I'm coming." Naomi stared at the message. She hadn't asked Jason to tell Graham, but apparently her son had decided Graham should know. "You don't have to. I want to. If that's okay." She looked at Jason, who was staring blankly at the wall, looked at the empty chair beside them, thought about facing this alone or with Graham there. "Okay." Presbyterian ER. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his work clothes, hair disheveled like he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. He went straight to Jason, pulled him into a hug that her son melted into. "He's going to be okay," Graham said firmly. "Kids are resilient. Head injuries look scary, but he's young and strong." "You don't know that." "No, but I believe it." Graham released Jason, then moved to Naomi, crouched in front of her chair. "What do you need?" "I need my grandson to be okay." "Beyond that, coffee, food, someone to yell at?" Despite everything, Naomi felt her lips twitch. Coffee would be good. He disappeared and returned with 3 cups, each one exactly how they took it. Then he settled into the chair beside her, took her hand, and simply sat with them. No platitudes, no false reassurance, just presence. An hour later, Claire emerged, her face tear-stained but composed. "They're admitting him. Moderate concussion, possible skull fracture. They want to keep him overnight for observation, maybe longer depending on how he does." "Can we see him?" Naomi asked. "2 at a time. They said immediate family only, but I told them you're his grandmother," and Claire looked at Graham, hesitated. "I can wait here," Graham said immediately. "No," Jason stood. "You've been here for us. Come back. Marcus asks about you all the time." They navigated the maze of hospital corridors to the pediatric unit, where Marcus lay in a bed that looked enormous around his small body. His head was bandaged, an IV in his tiny arm, monitors beeping steadily. But his eyes were open, and when he saw Naomi, he started crying. "Grandma, I fell. It hurts." "I know, baby, I know." She moved to his bedside, careful not to jostle him, and stroked his forehead. "But the doctors are taking good care of you." "Mr. Graham came too." Marcus brightened slightly, seeing Graham behind Jason. Graham approached slowly, gently. "Hey, buddy, I heard you had quite the adventure." "I fell off the jungle gym. There was blood." "You're very brave. Your dad told me you were super brave in the ambulance." "I was scared," Marcus admitted in a small voice. "Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. Brave means doing what you need to do even when you're scared." Graham looked at Jason. "Your dad does that every day." Jason's expression crumpled, and Claire pulled him close. They stayed for an hour, taking turns at Marcus's bedside, while the others sat in the family waiting area. Graham brought food no one could eat, made coffee runs, and called Maya with updates when she texted frantically from the airport. As night fell and visiting hours ended, the nurses told them only two could stay overnight, Jason and Claire, obviously. "We'll be back first thing in the morning," Naomi promised, kissing her grandson's forehead. "Grandma, don't go. I have to let your mommy and daddy stay with you tonight, but I'll be here when you wake up, I promise." Graham drove her home in silence. At her brownstone, he walked her to the door. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being there, for showing up without being asked. Where else would I be? That's my—" He stopped, corrected himself. "That's Marcus, and he matters to me. You all matter to me." Naomi looked up at this man who'd spent 6 hours in a hospital waiting room for a child who wasn't his, who'd supported her son and daughter-in-law, who'd done everything right without expectation of reward. "Come inside," she heard herself say. "Naomi, you're exhausted. Come inside, please." He followed her in, and she led him not to the kitchen or living room, but upstairs to her bedroom. There she turned to face him. "I don't want to be alone tonight," she said, "and I don't want you to be alone either. Can you just hold me?" "Yes." The word came out rough. "Yes, I can do that." They undressed down to underclothes, climbed into her bed, and Graham pulled her against his chest. She fit perfectly there, her head on his shoulder, his arms around her. "I was so scared," she whispered into the dark. "I know. When Jason called, all I could think was that I'm not ready. I'm not ready to lose anyone else. I buried Marcus 8 years ago and it almost broke me. I can't lose that baby. I can't. You won't. He's going to be fine. You can't promise that." "No, but I can believe it hard enough for both of us." He pressed his lips to her hair. "And I can be here, whatever happens, for as long as you need me." Naomi felt tears sliding into his shirt. "I love you. I tried not to. Tried to protect myself. But I love you. And that terrifies me." "I love you too. So much it actually hurts sometimes." His arms tightened. "But love isn't supposed to be safe, is it? It's supposed to be real, messy and terrifying and worth it. Is it worth it? With you? Always." She tilted her head up, found his mouth in the darkness, and kissed him. Not with the desperate hunger of their last time, but with something deeper. Tenderness, trust, the acknowledgement that they'd both fought hard to get back to this moment. Graham kissed her back slowly, reverently, like she was something precious. His hands stayed careful, respectful, even as she pressed closer. "I want you to stay," she murmured against his lips. "Tonight. Tomorrow. However long this takes with Marcus. I'm not going anywhere." They made love slowly, quietly, two people finding their way back to each other through touch and breath and whispered words. It felt like healing, like coming home, like the beginning of something they'd both almost destroyed. Afterward, wrapped around each other in the dark, Naomi felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty, life didn't offer that, but possibility, the chance that they could build something real this time, something lasting. "Graham?" she whispered. "Mm-hmm. Thank you for becoming someone I could trust again." His arms tightened. "Thank you for giving me the chance." They fell asleep like that, and Naomi didn't dream. Marcus improved rapidly. By morning, his CT scan came back clear, just a concussion, no fracture. By afternoon, he was demanding juice boxes and complaining about being bored. By evening, the doctors said he could go home the next day with careful monitoring. Naomi spent both days at the hospital, and Graham was there with her. Not hovering, not intrusive, just present. He brought meals, entertained Marcus with stories and card games, gave Jason and Claire breaks to shower and sleep. Maya arrived from LA and immediately understood what had shifted between Naomi and Graham. "So you're back together," she said, finding them in the hospital cafeteria on day 2. "We're figuring it out," Naomi said. "He's different," Maya observed, watching Graham through the window where he was playing cards with Marcus. "Like, fundamentally different from the man you left. People can change if they want it badly enough. And you? Are you different?" Naomi considered. "I'm clearer about what I need, what I won't accept. Ghana taught me that I'm fine alone. Better than fine. So being with Graham now, it's a choice, not a need. And that makes all the difference. Maya smiled. Good. That's exactly what it should be. Life slowly returned to normal. Marcus healed, the scare fading into family lore about the time he conquered the jungle gym. Naomi and Graham continued their careful courtship, though now he stayed over several nights a week, and she kept a drawer of her things at his penthouse. They were talking about moving in together. Not immediately, but eventually, when they were both ready. And then Jason called with news that changed everything. "Mom, can you come over? Tonight? I have something I need to show you and Graham." They arrived at Jason and Claire's brownstone to find her son at his dining table, laptop open, expression grim. "What's wrong?" Naomi asked immediately. "Sit down, both of you." Jason waited until they were settled, then turned his laptop around. "I've been doing some digging into Victoria." Graham stiffened. "Why?" "Because something didn't add up. The timing of her interference, the lies she told, the way she inserted herself into your relationship." Jason pulled up a series of documents, emails, text messages, screenshots. "She's been planning this for over a year, since before you even proposed to Mom." "Jason, what are you talking about?" Naomi leaned forward, scanning the screen. "Victoria's marriage. To Senator Madison has been failing for 3 years. He's been having an affair. This is documented in divorce proceedings she filed and then withdrew 6 months before you proposed, Graham. She withdrew them because she decided she wanted you back instead." Graham's face had gone pale. "That's not possible. She's the one who wanted the divorce 15 years ago. Because you weren't successful enough. Your company was stable but not spectacular. She wanted political connections, social standing. Madison gave her that." Jason clicked to another document. "But Madison's career peaked. There are rumors about financial impropriety, questions about campaign finance violations. His political future is uncertain. Meanwhile, your company has tripled in value. You're now worth significantly more than he is." "So she wants me for my money?" Graham's voice was flat. "Not just that, control. She spent 25 years married to you, shaping your life, being the power behind your success. Madison doesn't defer to her the same way. He has his own ambitions, his own advisors. With you, she could go back to being the woman who runs everything behind the scenes." Jason pulled up more evidence. "She started small. Friendly texts to Ethan and Olivia asking about your dating life. Casual mentions of how hard it must be for them to see you with someone new. Then, when you proposed to Mom, she escalated. Started offering to help with wedding planning. Feeding Ethan and Olivia concerns about being replaced. Positioning herself as the peacekeeper while actually creating all the conflict." Naomi felt sick. "She sabotaged us deliberately." "Yes, and she didn't stop after you broke up. She continued spreading lies, damaging your reputation, making herself look like the concerned ex-wife who only wanted family harmony." Jason met Graham's eyes. "She expected you to come crawling back. When you didn't, when you confronted her publicly instead, she panicked. That's when Madison finally filed for divorce. He couldn't afford the political scandal of a wife who was clearly still obsessed with her ex-husband." "How did you find all this?" Graham asked. "I'm a cybersecurity analyst. It's what I do. And after Marcus's accident, after I saw how you showed up for our family." Jason shrugged. "I wanted to know if Victoria was really done interfering or if she was just waiting for another opportunity. So I looked, and I found all of this." He pulled up one final document, a draft email from Victoria to Graham, dated just 2 weeks ago. "Graham, I've been thinking about us, about the mistakes we both made. Robert and I are divorcing, and I find myself reflecting on what really matters. You and me, we built something together. We raised children together. We understood each other in ways no one else ever could. I think we owe it to ourselves to explore whether we might have a second chance." The email was never sent, but the intent was clear. Graham stood abruptly, walked to the window, stood with his back to them. "She was going to try to get you back," Naomi said quietly. "Apparently." His voice was hollow. 25 years of marriage, 15 years of divorce, and she still thinks she can manipulate me." "What are you going to do?" Jason asked. Graham turned, and the expression on his face was steel. "I'm going to end this, permanently." The next morning, Graham called Victoria and told her they needed to meet. He recorded the conversation, legal in New York with one-party consent, and arranged to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Midtown, public enough to prevent a scene. Naomi wanted to go with him, but Graham insisted on doing this alone. "She's my past," he said, "and I need to be the one who closes that door completely." So Naomi waited at her brownstone with Jason, who'd sent the complete evidence package to his own phone so Graham could reference it during the conversation. 2 hours later, Graham returned. He looked exhausted, but relieved. "It's done." "What happened?" Naomi asked. "I told her I knew everything, showed her the evidence Jason found, gave her 2 choices: stop interfering in my life completely, or I take everything to the press and make sure her social standing, which she values more than anything, is destroyed." "What did she say?" "She tried to spin it, said she was only trying to protect the family, that she'd been worried about my judgment, that her intentions were good even if her methods were flawed." Graham's jaw tightened. Classic Victoria, never taking responsibility, always reframing herself as the victim or the hero. "Did she agree to back off?" "She did. But only because I made it clear I was done playing her games. I told her Ethan and Olivia are adults who can manage their own relationships with her. I told her I'm not her safety net, her backup plan, or her puppet, and I told her that if she ever, and I mean ever, speaks poorly of you again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what she did." Jason nodded approvingly. "That's the right move. I should have done it 15 years ago. Hell, I should have done it 25 years ago when we were still married." Graham sat heavily on Naomi's couch. "I let her control me for decades because it was easier than confronting her. And it almost cost me the best thing that ever happened to me." He looked at Naomi, and she saw fear in his eyes. "This is the last time," he said, "the absolute last time she ever impacts our relationship. I swear it." Naomi moved to sit beside him, took his hand. "I believe you. Really. Really. Because you didn't wait for her to make another move. You didn't try to smooth things over or maintain some false peace. You confronted the problem directly and set boundaries that actually matter." She squeezed his fingers. "That's what I needed to see. That's what I've always needed." Graham pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. "I love you so much, and I'm so tired of my past trying to destroy our future." "Then let's stop letting it." Naomi pulled back to look at him. "Your past with Victoria is done. She can't hurt us anymore unless we give her power, and I'm not interested in giving her anything. So what now?" "Now?" Naomi smiled. "Now we live our lives. We build something real, without her shadow looming over everything. We figure out this second chance we've been given." Graham kissed her, slow and sweet and full of relief. "I like that plan." Jason cleared his throat. "If you two are done being disgustingly romantic, I'm going to open a bottle of champagne. We're celebrating Victoria Sterling Madison getting exactly what she deserves, nothing." They drank champagne in Naomi's kitchen as the afternoon light faded, and for the first time in over a year, she felt truly free. Free of Victoria's manipulation, free of doubt about Graham's commitment, free to build a life on her own terms with a man who'd finally learned to choose her. 1 month later, Thanksgiving. Naomi was hosting Thanksgiving for the first time since Ghana. Her brownstone was filled with family: Jason, Claire, and Marcus, Maya, who'd flown in from LA, Ethan and his wife Priya, and Graham. Notably absent were Olivia and Victoria. Olivia had called to apologize, but said she needed more time to process everything she'd learned about her mother. Naomi understood and held no grudges. The meal was chaotic and wonderful. Marcus showed off his fully healed head to anyone who would listen. Maya and Ethan discovered they both loved bad reality TV and spent an hour dissecting the latest drama. Claire and Priya bonded over the challenges of dealing with Sterling Richardson family dynamics. And Graham, who'd been nervous about the whole thing, fit seamlessly into the chaos. After dinner, while the others were in the living room arguing over pie preferences, Graham pulled Naomi aside. "Come upstairs with me for a minute." "Are you trying to seduce me while my family's downstairs?" she teased. "No, well, maybe later. But right now I need to talk to you about something." They went to her bedroom, and Graham pulled a small box from his pocket. Naomi's heart stopped. "Graham, Wait, before you panic, this isn't what you think. Or maybe it is, but not exactly. He opened the box to reveal the engagement ring she'd returned almost a year ago. I've been carrying this around for months, and I realize now that I've been waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect words, the perfect gesture. But perfect doesn't exist, and with us, it never will. That's not very romantic. No, but it's honest. He took the ring out, held it between them. We're messy. We've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. We've broken up, gotten back together, and navigated more drama than any couple should have to, but we keep showing up for each other, and that matters more than perfect. Graham, what are you asking? I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. We're not ready. And I know that. He took her left hand, but instead of sliding the ring on her finger, he closed her hand around it. I'm asking you to hold on to this, to take your time deciding if you want to wear it again, if you want to be my wife, or if you just want to be my partner without the paperwork. Whatever you want, Naomi. I'm just asking you to keep considering a future with me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're really not proposing? I'm really not. I'm just saying, I'm here, for however long you'll have me, in whatever form you'll have me. Naomi looked down at the ring in her palm, then up at this man who'd learned to give her space, to let her choose, to stop pushing. What if I want to wear it? She asked, not as an engagement ring, but as a promise, a symbol that we're choosing each other, even if we're not ready for marriage yet. Then wear it however you want. It's yours. You've always been yours. She slipped the ring onto her right hand on the ring finger. It fit perfectly, caught the light just like it had a year ago. There, she said, a promise that I'm choosing this, choosing us, choosing to keep building toward something I hope will last. Graham's smile was brilliant. That's more than I could have hoped for. He kissed her, and she kissed him back, and downstairs they could hear Marcus yelling about someone eating all the whipped cream. We should get back, Naomi murmured. One more minute. Graham held her close, swaying slightly like they were dancing. I need to tell you something. When I thought I'd lost you, really lost you, when you went to Ghana, I felt like I'd been given a glimpse of a life I could have had, and then had it torn away. And I promised myself that if I ever got another chance, I wouldn't waste a single moment. You haven't. I'm going to keep not wasting them, every day, for as long as you'll let me. That's a good plan. They went back downstairs to find Maya had, indeed, eaten all the whipped cream and was shamelessly blaming Marcus. The rest of the evening dissolved into the warm chaos of family, and Naomi caught herself smiling at nothing, just feeling grateful. Grateful for second chances, grateful for a man who'd learned to be worthy of them, grateful for a family that accepted him despite the messy journey. Later that night, after everyone had left and Graham was helping her clean up, he paused with a dish towel in his hand. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you think we'll make it, long term? Naomi considered the question seriously. I think we have a shot, a real shot, because we've both done the work, we've both changed, and we both know what we're fighting for now. But I also think relationships take constant effort, constant choosing, and I can't promise perfect any more than you can. But you can promise to keep trying? I can promise that. She moved into his arms, rested her head on his chest. I can promise that I love you, that I see you, and that I'm not going anywhere unless you give me reason to, and I trust that you won't. I won't. His arms tightened around her. Never again. They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, and when Graham left for the night, they still maintained separate residences, taking things slow. Naomi stood at her door watching him go. The ring on her right hand caught the porch light, and she smiled. Not an engagement? Not yet, but a promise. And sometimes promises were even more meaningful than vows. Chapter 4. The new year arrived with snow blanketing New York, and Naomi found herself in an unexpected place, content. She and Graham had settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable. Dinners 3 or 4 nights a week, weekends split between his penthouse and her brownstone. Sunday mornings with the family, Jason, Claire, and Marcus had become non-negotiables. Date nights where they actually talked instead of just falling into bed, though they did plenty of that too. It felt real, solid, like something they were building together instead of something that was happening to them. In mid-January, Graham invited her to his office for lunch. She arrived to find his assistant grinning knowingly and his conference room set up with takeout from her favorite Thai place. "What's this?" she asked, settling into a chair across from him. "Lunch and a conversation I've been putting off because I'm terrified of your answer." He pushed Pad CW toward her. "The company is expanding. Major new initiative in renewable energy infrastructure across sub-Saharan Africa." Naomi's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "That's incredible, Graham." "It is. It's also going to require me to travel extensively. 6 months of the year, minimum, split between Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, and South Africa. Setting up operations, building relationships with government officials, overseeing construction. When does it start?" "March, if I say yes." He met her eyes. "I wanted to talk to you first." "Why?" "It's your company, your decision." "Because it affects us. 6 months of long distance, different time zones, me being unavailable for family dinners and weekend plans. I won't take it if you're not comfortable with it." Naomi set down her fork, studied this man who'd learned to put her needs alongside his own. "Graham, this is an incredible opportunity. Why would I ask you to turn it down?" "Because I've already asked you to sacrifice enough. I won't be the man who asks you to build a life around my absence." "You're not asking me to sacrifice anything. You're asking if I'm willing to support your career the way you've supported mine." She reached across the table, took his hand. "I spent 6 months in Ghana doing work I loved. You were here, holding down the fort, respecting my space. This is my turn to do that for you." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. With one condition." He tensed. "What?" "Take me with you. Not for the whole 6 months. I have my own commitments here. But for a few weeks at a time. I still have contacts in Ghana, relationships with the women's cooperatives. I could be useful. And I'd get to see the work you're doing." Graham's face transformed. "You'd do that?" "I'd love to. Besides, it would be good practice for us, learning to exist in each other's worlds instead of just our own." He came around the table, pulled her up into a kiss that tasted like relief and joy and red curry. "Have I told you lately that you're extraordinary?" "You might have mentioned it once or twice." "Well, consider it mentioned again." He held her close, and she felt his heart racing against hers. "I love you, and I love that you see my dreams as something to support instead of something that threatens us." "That's what partnership looks like," Naomi said simply. "We take turns being the one who needs support and the one who provides it. As long as it's balanced, we're fine. It will be balanced, I promise." They ate lunch planning the logistics, which trips she'd join, how they'd stay connected during the times apart, what this meant for their timeline toward marriage. And Naomi felt something she hadn't expected. Excitement. Not just about supporting Graham, but about her own continued work in Africa, about the life they were building together that honored both their ambitions. This was what she'd wanted all along. Partnership that expanded rather than contracted. Love that made space instead of demanding sacrifice. 6 weeks later, late February, Graham was scheduled to leave for Ghana in 1 week. The house was a chaos of packing, planning, and last-minute preparations. Naomi would join him for 3 weeks in April, then again for 2 weeks in June, but March would be their first real test of long distance. They were having dinner at his penthouse when his phone rang. Ethan. "Dad? We have a situation." Graham put the call on speaker. "What's wrong?" "Mom showed up at my office today. She's not doing well. The divorce with Madison was finalized last week, and apparently she's losing the Connecticut house, most of her social circle, basically everything she built her identity around." Ethan sounded exhausted. "She asked me to talk to you, to ask if you'd reconsider helping her." Graham's expression went carefully blank. "Helping her how?" "Financially. She says Madison left her with nothing, which isn't true. She got a settlement, but it's not the lifestyle she's accustomed to. And she thought maybe you'd be willing to provide some temporary support while she gets back on her feet." Naomi watched Graham's face, saw him processing. This was the test, the moment that would define whether he'd truly changed or whether old patterns would reassert themselves. "Ethan," Graham said carefully, "your mother is not my responsibility. She's an adult who made choices that led to her current situation. I'm sorry she's struggling, but I'm not going to rescue her. I know, I told her that, but she's my mom, and seeing her like this, Ethan's voice cracked. She's living in some apartment in Norwalk, working as an event coordinator's assistant. She's 57 and starting over from scratch. That's hard, but it's also what happens when you burn bridges and manipulate people. Graham looked at Naomi, and she saw the conflict in his eyes. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll pay for 6 months of therapy for her. Good therapy, with someone who specializes in personality disorders and life transitions. That's it. No money, no job connections, no opening doors that she'll use to insert herself back into my life. That's more than fair, Ethan said. Thank you. After they hung up, Graham sat heavily on his couch, head in his hands. You did the right thing, Naomi said quietly. Then why do I feel terrible? Because you're a good man who doesn't like seeing people suffer, even people who've hurt you. She moved to sit beside him. But Graham, helping her financially, would have sent the message that her behavior has no real consequences, that she can manipulate and lie and still have you as a safety net. I know, I just hate that she's struggling. She's struggling because of choices she made. And the therapy you're offering? That's incredibly generous. More than she deserves, honestly. Graham pulled Naomi close. I need you to know, if at any point you feel like I'm slipping back into old patterns, if you see me prioritizing her comfort over our boundaries, you'll tell me. Immediately. I will. But Graham, I trust you now. I trust that you'll make the right call even when it's hard. I'm going to keep earning that trust. Every day. They sat together in the quiet of his penthouse, and Naomi felt the last of her reservations dissolve. This was the man she'd needed him to become. Not perfect, but aware. Not without compassion, but with boundaries. Not afraid to disappoint people who expected him to sacrifice himself for their comfort. This was a man she could build a life with. 1 week later, Graham's departure. The morning Graham left for Ghana, Naomi went to the airport with him despite his protests that it was too early, too much trouble. I want to, she said firmly. I want to see you off properly. At the international terminal, they stood together with coffee and the forced cheer of people trying not to acknowledge impending separation. 3 weeks, Graham said. Then I'll be back for 4 days before the next trip, and you'll come in April. I know the schedule. Naomi straightened his collar unnecessarily. You're going to do amazing work there. I'm going to miss you every single day. Good. That means you're invested, she smiled to soften the words. But you're also going to be so busy you won't have time to be miserable, and we'll video chat, and I'll send you pictures of Marcus doing ridiculous things. I'm holding you to that. His boarding call came over the intercom. They both pretended not to hear it for another 30 seconds. I should go, Graham said finally. You should. He kissed her, long and thorough, right there in the middle of JFK Terminal with hundreds of people streaming past them. I love you, he murmured against her lips. Thank you for supporting this, for not making me choose between you and my work. You're not choosing between us, you're choosing both. That's the whole point. She touched his face gently. Go build something extraordinary. I'll be here when you get back. And then in April, you'll be there. Exactly. She watched him go through security, watched him turn back one last time to wave, and then he was gone. Naomi stood in the terminal feeling the ache of his absence, but also something unexpected. Pride. Pride in him for taking this opportunity, pride in herself for supporting it, pride in what they'd built together. This was what mature love looked like. Not desperate clinging, not fear of separation, but trust that the relationship was strong enough to survive distance. She drove back to Brooklyn, called Maya to report that Graham had left safely, and then threw herself into her own work. She had board meetings, grant reviews, and the ongoing work with the women's cooperatives in Ghana that she'd maintained after her fellowship. The days fell into a new rhythm. Morning coffee while video chatting with Graham, late afternoon for him, early morning for her. Work that filled her days. Evening calls with family. Weekend visits with Marcus, who asked constantly when Mr. Graham would be back. And through it all, the ring on her right hand catching light, reminding her of the promise they'd made. Not marriage yet, but commitment. Not perfection, but showing up. 6 weeks later, April in Ghana. Naomi stepped off the plane in Accra and felt like she'd come home to a second family. The heat, the chaos, the vibrant energy of the city. It all felt familiar and welcoming. Graham was waiting in arrivals, and when she saw him, her breath caught. He looked good, tanned, energized, like the work was feeding something essential in him. "You're here," he said, pulling her into his arms. "I'm here." She kissed him, not caring about the public display. "Show me everything." For 3 weeks, they lived and worked together in Ghana. Graham took her to the sites where Sterling Industries was building solar infrastructure. She introduced him to the women's cooperatives she'd worked with, and he immediately saw opportunities for partnership, providing reliable power to their production facilities, creating jobs in renewable energy installation and maintenance. "This is brilliant," he said during a meeting with Ama Textile Cooperative. "You provide local labor and expertise. We provide training and equipment. It's exactly the kind of sustainable development we want to model." Naomi watched him work and fell in love with him all over again. This was Graham in his element, creative, strategic, genuinely committed to doing good in the world, not just making money, but making a difference. They lived in his company housing, a beautiful apartment with a view of the ocean, and at night, after long days of work, they'd sit on the balcony drinking wine and talking about everything. "I could get used to this," Graham said one evening, his arm around her shoulders. "Working together, building something that matters." "We are building something that matters, just not only in Ghana." "True, but there's something about being here, with you, doing work we both believe in." He trailed off, then turned to face her. "Naomi, I know we said we weren't ready for marriage yet, but I need to ask you something." Her heart kicked. "Okay. When we do get married, if we do, would you want to split our time? 6 months in New York, 6 months traveling for work? Both of us, together, wherever the opportunities are?" Naomi considered. She'd spent so much of her first marriage accommodating Marcus's schedule, his needs, his career. The idea of Graham asking her to do the same should have raised red flags. But this felt different. He wasn't asking her to follow him. He was asking her to build something together, to make decisions jointly about where they worked and lived. "I'd want flexibility," she said slowly. "Some projects I can do remotely, others require being in New York. Can we make decisions based on what makes sense for both our work rather than assuming your career automatically takes priority?" "Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. True partnership in every sense." "Then yes. I think I'd love that kind of life." Graham pulled her close and they sat watching the sunset over the Atlantic, both of them imagining the life they could build. A life that honored both their ambitions, both their commitments, both their dreams. 2 weeks later, back in New York, Naomi returned from Ghana glowing, and everyone noticed. Maya commented that she looked 10 years younger. Jason said he hadn't seen her this happy since before Marcus died. Even little Marcus announced that Grandma smiled more now. She and Graham had said goodbye in Accra, with her returning to New York while he continued on to Kenya for the next phase of work. But the separation felt different now, not scary or uncertain, but simply the reality of two busy people building lives they loved. On a Saturday morning in early May, Naomi was in her garden planting tomatoes when her phone rang. Ethan. "Ms. Richardson, do you have a minute?" "Of course. How are you?" "Good. Really good, actually. I wanted to update you on Mom." Naomi's hand tightened on the phone. "Is she okay?" She's doing better. The therapy Dad paid for has actually been helping. She's been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, which apparently explained a lot for the therapist. And she's been doing the work to understand why she does what she does." "That's good." "It is. But here's the thing. She asked me to reach out to you, to ask if you'd be willing to meet with her. She wants to apologize, actually apologize, not the fake kind she's done in the past." Naomi sat back on her heels, dirt-covered gloves forgotten. "Ethan, I don't know if that's a good idea." "I understand, and if you say no, I'll tell her and that'll be the end of it. But she's been working really hard, and her therapist thinks it would be beneficial for her recovery to make amends where possible. Not for you, for her, as part of her treatment." Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. After they hung up, Naomi sat in her garden trying to process. Part of her wanted nothing to do with Victoria Sterling Madison. The woman had caused so much pain, so much chaos. But another part, the part that had spent 6 months in Ghana watching women rebuild their lives from nothing, the part that believed in second chances because she'd been given one herself, that part wondered if maybe, just maybe, people really could change. She called Graham that evening. "Victoria wants to meet with me," she said after they'd caught up on their days. "To apologize. You don't have to do that." "I know, but what if I want to?" Silence on the other end. Then, "Why would you want to?" "Because I've spent the last year learning that people can change if they do the work. You changed. I changed. Maybe she's actually doing the work too. And if she's not, if this is just another manipulation, then I'll know, and I'll walk away. But Graham, I can't spend the rest of our lives afraid of your ex-wife. At some point, I need to face her and prove to myself that she doesn't have power over me anymore. You're extraordinary, you know that? I'm practical. There's a difference." She smiled even though he couldn't see it. "I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it for me. To close that chapter completely. Then I support you, whatever you decide. Thank you for trusting my judgment. Always." 1 week later. The meeting. Naomi agreed to meet Victoria at a neutral coffee shop in Manhattan. She arrived early, ordered tea, and claimed a corner table where she could see the door. Victoria arrived exactly on time, and Naomi barely recognized her. Gone was the polished political wife with the perfect hair and designer clothes. This woman wore jeans and a simple sweater, minimal makeup, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked older, tired, but also somehow more real. "Thank you for meeting me," Victoria said, sitting down without ordering anything. "I know you didn't have to." "No, I didn't. I'm not going to make excuses for what I did. My therapist says I need to own my behavior without justification. So here it is. I sabotaged your relationship with Graham because I couldn't stand seeing him happy with someone else, especially someone as accomplished and beautiful and genuinely good as you." Naomi blinked. That was not what she'd expected. "I spent 25 years married to Graham," Victoria continued, "and I took him for granted. He was steady, reliable, accommodating. And I thought that meant I could have him whenever I wanted, however I wanted. When my marriage to Robert fell apart and I realized Graham had become successful beyond anything I'd imagined, I wanted him back. Not because I loved him. I'm not sure I ever really loved him, not the way he deserved, but because I loved what he represented. Security, status, control. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth, and because part of my recovery means acknowledging the damage I've caused and taking responsibility for it." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I hurt you. I hurt Graham. I hurt my own children by making them question their father's judgment and their place in his life. And I did it all because I couldn't stand being irrelevant." Naomi sipped her tea, giving herself time to process. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I don't want your forgiveness. I haven't earned it. I don't want your friendship. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did. And I'm sorry. Genuinely, deeply sorry." They sat in silence for a moment. Naomi studied the woman across from her and saw not the polished manipulator who'd haunted her engagement, but a broken person trying to rebuild. "I appreciate the apology," Naomi said finally, "and I can see you're doing the work. But I need you to understand something. If you ever, and I mean ever, interfere in my relationship with Graham again, if you spread lies or manipulate your children or try to insert yourself into our lives, I will not be kind. I will not give you another chance. I will make sure you understand the consequences of your actions in ways that are both legal and devastating. Are we clear?" Victoria nodded, tears spilling over. "Crystal clear. Good. Then I wish you well with your recovery. I hope you build a life you're proud of. But that life cannot include interfering with mine." "I understand." Naomi stood, gathered her things. At the door, she turned back. "For what it's worth, Victoria, I do hope therapy helps you, not for me or for Graham, but for you. Everyone deserves the chance to become better than their worst moments. Then she walked out into the spring sunshine and felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She'd faced Victoria Sterling Madison and walked away still standing, still strong, still secure in who she was and what she deserved. That was power. 3 months later, August Graham came home for good in late July. The African initiative successfully launched and staffed with local teams. He walked into Naomi's brownstone, sunburned and exhausted and grinning. "I'm home," he announced, dropping his bags and pulling her into his arms, "for at least 2 months before the next trip." 2 whole months? However will I stand you?" she teased but held him tight. That night, over dinner with the entire family, Jason's crew, Maya, who'd flown in to welcome Graham home, Ethan and Priya, even Olivia, who'd finally started building a relationship with Naomi. Graham stood and clinked his glass. "I want to say something," he announced. "These last 6 months have been incredible professionally. We've built infrastructure that will bring power to communities that have never had it. We've created jobs, trained local teams, and established partnerships that will last for decades. I'm proud of that work." He looked at Naomi. "But none of it would have meant anything if I'd had to do it alone, or if I'd had someone who resented my absence. Instead, I had a partner who supported my dreams, who joined me when she could, and who built her own incredible work while I was gone." "Graham," Naomi said softly, "you don't have to. Let me finish." He pulled something from his pocket, the ring she'd been wearing on her right hand. She hadn't even noticed him take it. "6 months ago, I gave you this ring as a promise, not an engagement, just a symbol that we were choosing each other, and you've worn it on your right hand, showing everyone that we're committed but not yet ready for marriage." He got down on one knee, and the room went silent. "But I'm ready now, more than ready, and I'm hoping you are too." He met her eyes, and she saw certainty there, and love, and the kind of deep knowing that came from having weathered storms together. "Naomi Richardson, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my equal in every sense? Will you build a life with me that honors both our ambitions, both our families, both our dreams?" Naomi looked at this man who'd learned to choose her, to support her, to stand beside her rather than expecting her to follow. Looked at her family surrounding them, faces bright with hope. Looked at the ring in his hand, the same ring she'd given back 18 months ago when he'd asked her to accept his ex-wife's interference. So much had changed since then. They'd both changed. "Yes," she said, voice clear and strong. "Yes, I'll marry you." The room erupted in cheers. Graham slipped the ring onto her left hand this time, stood and kissed her, while their family celebrated around them. "Third time's the charm," Maya said, grinning. "Second engagement," Naomi corrected, "but hopefully the last first kiss as an engaged couple." "Definitely the last," Graham murmured against her lips. "This time, we're doing it right." 6 months later, Naomi had wanted simple, and that's what they created. 75 guests in the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens Conservatory, even though it was February and cold. The indoor space glowed with warmth, the hothouse filled with blooming orchids, ferns, and tropical flowers. String quartet playing contemporary arrangements of classic songs. No seating chart coordinated by ex-wives. No interference from anyone. Just 2 families coming together to celebrate something real. Naomi wore cream silk, elegant, age-appropriate, stunning. Her locks were crowned with fresh flowers, and the ring on her finger caught every light. Maya was her maid of honor, having joked that she'd earned the title by supporting Naomi through the Victoria Wars. Jason walked her down the aisle since Marcus, her late husband, couldn't be there, and she knew he'd be proud of the life she'd built after him. Graham stood at the altar with Ethan as his best man, and when he saw Naomi coming toward him, his expression made her glad she hadn't worn mascara. The ceremony was short, personal. They'd written their own vows. Graham went first. "Naomi, I promise to choose you. Every day, in big ways and small ways, I promise to choose you over comfort, over approval, over anyone who asks me to make you smaller. I promise to support your dreams as fiercely as I pursue my own. I promise to show up even when it's hard. I promise to keep growing, keep learning, keep becoming someone worthy of your love. And I promise that this partnership will always be just that, two equals building something beautiful together. Naomi's turn. Graham, I promise to trust you, to believe in the man you've become and the commitment you've made. I promise to support your ambitions while pursuing my own. I promise not to keep score, not to hold grudges, not to punish you for past mistakes when you've proven you've changed. I promise to choose us, even when choosing us means having hard conversations or setting boundaries. And I promise to keep choosing myself too, because I've learned that I can't love you fully if I've abandoned myself. There wasn't a dry eye in the conservatory. The officiant, a friend from the Gates Foundation, pronounced them married, and when they kissed, their family erupted in applause. The reception was everything they'd wanted. Good food, great music, speeches that were funny and heartfelt. Marcus, the small one, served as ring-bearer and took his duties incredibly seriously. Ethan and Olivia toasted their father and his new wife with genuine joy. Jason spoke about watching his mother learn to choose herself and finding a man who chose her too. And Maya, in her maid of honor speech, said, I've known Naomi since I was 12 years old. She taught me that love isn't about sacrificing yourself. It's about finding someone who makes you more yourself. Graham, you've become that person for her. Don't screw it up. Everyone laughed, including Graham, who raised his glass to Maya in acknowledgement. Late in the evening, as they swayed together on the dance floor while their families mingled around them, Graham murmured, How are you feeling, Mrs. Sterling? Keeping my own name, actually. Ms. Richardson is perfectly fine. Of course you are, he grinned. How are you feeling, Ms. Richardson, who just married Mr. Sterling? I'm feeling like I made the right choice. Finally. Only took us 18 months, a broken engagement, 6 months on another continent, and some serious therapy. Worth it, though. Completely worth it, he spun her gently. Where should we go for our honeymoon? I was thinking, nowhere. Let's stay in New York. Enjoy our home, our families, our normal life. We've done enough traveling. That sounds perfect. They danced until late, then left in a shower of rose petals to spend their first night as a married couple in Graham's penthouse, which would officially become their penthouse next month when Naomi moved in. In bed that night, wrapped in each other's arms, Naomi felt complete in a way she'd never expected. Not because Graham completed her, she'd been whole on her own, but because they'd built something together that was bigger than either of them alone. I love you, Graham whispered into the dark. I love you too. She turned to face him. Thank you for doing the work, for becoming someone I could trust again. Thank you for giving me the chance, and for teaching me that real love means choosing every single day. They fell asleep like that, and Naomi didn't dream of Marcus or her first marriage or any of the pain that had brought her to this moment. She only dreamed of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that, building a life with a man who'd learned to choose her. 1 year later, Naomi sat in the garden of their brownstone. They'd decided to keep hers and rent out Graham's penthouse, watching Marcus chase butterflies while Jason and Claire set up for Sunday dinner. Graham was inside helping Maya make her famous guacamole, which everyone knew came from a recipe she'd found online, but no one mentioned. Ethan and Priya were expecting their first child in 3 months. Olivia had started dating someone new, a teacher who seemed kind and stable, exactly what she needed after years of absorbing her mother's chaos. Victoria was living in Boston now, working as a life coach after completing her certification. She sent birthday cards to Graham and the kids, but otherwise stayed out of their lives. Naomi had heard through Ethan that she was dating someone, a librarian who apparently had no patience for drama. Good for her. As for Naomi and Graham, they'd settled into the life they'd imagined. He traveled for work 3 months of the year, and she joined him when she could. She continued her work with women's cooperatives and non-profit boards. They hosted Sunday dinners weekly. They argued sometimes, usually about whose turn it was to handle Marcus's sugar-fueled chaos, but they worked through it with the tools they'd learned. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was so much better than the fairy tale she'd almost settled for. Graham emerged from the house, 2 glasses of wine in hand, and settled onto the bench beside her. Family's almost all here. Maya says we're eating in 20 minutes whether Ethan arrives or not. He texted, running late because of traffic. Of course he is. Graham handed her a glass, clinked his against it. To us, to choosing each other every day. To knowing when to walk away and when to stay, Naomi amended. That too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their family gather, and Naomi thought about the journey that had brought them here. The broken engagement, the months apart, the hard work of becoming better people, individually and together. She'd been 56 when she'd called off their first engagement, choosing herself over comfort. Now, at 58, she was sitting in her garden with her husband, surrounded by family, living proof that the hardest choices were sometimes the most necessary. Marcus, her grandson, ran over, breathless. "Grandma, can you come see the caterpillar I found?" "Absolutely." She stood, let him grab her hand, and glanced back at Graham. He was watching her with soft eyes, that look that never got old. The look that said, "I chose you, and I'd choose you again." She smiled at him, mouthed, "I love you," and let her grandson drag her across the garden to see his discovery. This was what choosing yourself looked like, and somehow she'd gotten him too. The life she'd wanted, the respect she'd demanded, the partnership she'd refused to settle for. It had taken walking away to find her way back. But sometimes that was exactly what it took.